the major key to your better future is you. And it kind of provides information about the fact that you are actually in control of your future, you are in control of your destiny. And if there's something that you don't like about what's going on now, you have the power to actually make a change. And it was no mistake, the words that have been used in bold. So it's the major key to your better future is you. So this is something worth jotting down for those that are writing notes. Right. So I wanted to start with that before I actually introduce myself. So Kushala has gone through a lovely introduction of who I am, and I'll just quickly go through some of the stuff that he's already mentioned already. So my name is Muzzie, and Muzzie is a short version of my full name, which is at the bottom there. For those that want to give it a try, please feel free, but I'd prefer you don't. So Muzzie is Muzzie Nduna, and I'm from Zimbabwe, as mentioned. So I'm a property acquisition director. In our business, I essentially just go out and get more properties. I'm the guy who speaks to landlords, guy who speaks to vendors, and just pass things on. I'm also a property mentor, as mentioned earlier on by Parry. I do help people who are looking to start out, people who are looking to scale in whatever strategies that you guys are working on. I'm also a husband and a father. In the right-hand side, you can see a picture of our family there. They've grown a little bit more than what you can see now. So that's me as an introduction, really. So just quick information about my life before property. So I grew up in Zimbabwe. I came to the UK when I was 17. So I didn't actually go to school in the UK. And in the time that I actually got here, what am I hearing? Okay, there you go. In the time that I actually got here, I went straight to college, and from college, I didn't really know what to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like many people, after finishing school, you're kind of going through this process of what am I going to do with my life? What should I do? You're asking your parents, you're asking your friends, and it was just the case of, do you know what? Whatever everyone else is doing is what I'm going to end up doing. So a group of the guys that were in college with me decided to go and do engineering, and I thought, let's just do engineering. Since everyone else is doing it, let's see what it's all about. So I happened to actually enjoy it. I happened to be very good at it. I followed it up on education, did the apprentice program all the way until I started working for automotive industries around the West Midlands. So for those who know England, manufacturing engineering or manufacturing and automotive is predominantly in the West Midlands. So that's where most jobs would be, either working for Jaguar Land Rover or working for their suppliers. So it's a big industry on this side of the world. So I ended up working for those companies, kind of worked my way up the corporate ladder, up until the time that I actually left my job, which was about 2 years ago. Where I was a business improvement manager. So in terms of career choice, even though it was kind of accidental, kind of peer pressure, kind of I'm not sure what I'm doing, I just happened to actually really enjoy it. It worked out really well for me. And so I can't complain about my career choice. Okay, so once I actually sort of got to a point, now every single time you go through a certain stage in your life, it starts with a learning. So it's the first time you're doing it, you learn it, and then you get really good at it, and then soon you either figure out whether you love it or you don't like it at all, and then you make a decision to actually either transition or do something about it. So when it came to my manufacturing background, my job itself, I got to a point where I really enjoyed it, but then I started to feel a bit stagnant. I felt like we're not really moving anymore. I'm not progressing. I've gotten really good at my job. I get to a point where, and some people will recognize with this, you get to work and you actually switch off, right? Because you're not even thinking anymore. You know everything that's going on. You actually switch off when you get to work. You work in auto mode and you switch on when you leave. So when I felt that, I knew I had to do something different. I had to start looking for something else. So I did this thing where whatever job I'm doing, I look at my boss and decide whether that's something I actually want to do and aspire to do. And I would be really good at what I'm doing and start doing the jobs that other people are doing above me to kind of learn until eventually I get a promotion. But I got to a point where I was looking at my boss and I thought, I don't think I actually want your job. I started kind of falling out of the whole thing. I don't want to be you. I don't want to be in your position. I'm not passionate about doing it anymore. So the only option for me was to go either sideways or just find something else completely different. And this is where I bumped into property. This is back in 2018. Now, for many people, some people still think this now. If you're going to be investing in property, the only way you're investing in property is to raise a deposit and buy the house via a mortgage. That's the only way. That's what most people think, and that's what I thought at the time. So I accidentally found a property training company, and I say accidentally, it was a friend of ours who convinced me, my wife, and my sister-in-law about this property training thing. And I was like, what's that all about? Why would you go to get trained about property? Just raise a deposit and buy the thing. There's nothing else to it, right? That's what I thought. And then I went to this property training thing. It was up in Manchester, good 2 hours drive from where I live. And I was convinced that my wife and sister-in-law were just dragging me there because they don't like driving and I like driving. And I thought, you know what, let's make a weekend of it and let's go listen to this nonsense. Yeah. So that's how I actually got involved in property. So got to this training crash course and I got introduced to a whole new world, right? And a whole new world. I had no idea about the possibilities of being involved in property. So if you could just hit the next button, please, 𝐿𝐻𝐫𝐿. So here we go. I get to this training company and they're starting to hit me with these terminologies. And I'm thinking, what the hell, right? All I knew was buy a house, rent it out. And someone is talking to me about deal packaging, serviced accommodation, lease option. I'm like, what are you talking about? You know, what on earth is this nonsense you're talking to me about? I just need to buy the house. And we got involved in this. We got educated over a 2-day period, just 2 days. And coming out of that 2-day session, my life completely changed. I was like, right, this is it, right? This is the thing. I'm going to be a millionaire next week. I'm done leaving my job right now. So all of these strategies, for those that have never heard of them, you've got the deal packaging element where you can actually find properties, sell them onto other people without having to get involved, and you get paid for your time. Serviced accommodation, commonly known as Airbnb. HMO, where you can actually rent out a room. The rent-to-rent element where you can acquire the property without actually buying it. Lease option, which is a delayed purchase. You can agree a purchase price now, take control of the property and buy it later in the future. Assisted sale, when you can actually work with the vendor, actually buy the property through the vendor and actually work with the vendor and use some of their money or actually use the money that's in the property. Like, ridiculous, right? How can you buy a house and get the vendor to pay you as well at the same time? I'm like, that is mad, right? And then you got the tenant buyer. You can actually get a property, get a tenant in the property, and they will buy the house for you at the end of a term, which is higher than what you've actually purchased the property through the vendor. I'm like, oh my gosh, where have I been my entire life? What have I been doing, right? So I got really excited and started taking this on now. I started getting to find out a bit more about it. So these are the versions of the strategies in terms of investing in property that are different things that you can actually do. And for those who want to find out a bit more about it, please go ahead and actually do some research on it. On this presentation, I'm going to be talking a little bit more about rent to rent itself as a strategy, because it links to so many different ones here and it touches on all sorts of different ones. So that's where we're going to be going ahead to. Right, if we can go to the next slide, please. Right, so before I go into the rent to rent, I'm just going to go through what I say is the 9-month journey. Now, 9-month journey, the reason I mentioned it is because from the time I got introduced to all those amazing strategies to the point I got my very first deal was 9 months. Now, remember I said when they introduced me to this, I was ready to be a millionaire next week, right? It doesn't work like that, guys. It really does not work like that. It is not that easy. So I was very excited. I understood the concept and I was like, I'm going to go and do it. I'll be out of my job within a year. I'll be a millionaire in a couple of months. It took me 9 months to get one property, just one, right? So what did I do in the 9 months? Okay, so I'm just going to explain the things that I did. And for those people that are just getting introduced to this, you can look at this journey itself and see how you can shorten this 9 months for yourself, right? They always say it's good to learn from mistakes. It's even better to learn from someone else's mistakes, not yours. So all the mistakes I'm going to talk about here, guys, learn from them so you don't have to do them yourself, right? So let's go. Next slide. Right. So property training courses. Now, once I went to that one that introduced me to all sorts of things, I thought, okay, that's not the only course that's available. I'm going to go to all sorts of different ones and start actually learning even more about it from different aspects, from different angles, from different trainers, and actually sort of be a student. Now, we talk about the fact that you should not be a follower, be a student. A follower will just do what they're told. A student will collect information and make sure the conclusion is of their own understanding. So everything I'm going to share with you now, don't just go ahead and do it because Muzzie said. Take it, digest it, understand it, and make sure your action is based on your own conclusion. Yeah. Be a student, not a follower. So I did all sorts of training courses up and down the country. Now, I went crazy on courses, by the way. I went to almost every company you can think of, going for these free crash courses and getting information and networking with other people, right? Next slide. I build rapport with property agents. Okay, so when we say agents, you've got people that actually sell deals, like the deal packaging that I spoke about earlier on, but you also got letting agents who you'll find in offices. You've got estate agents. Now, those are good people to be friends with, right? They're very good people to be friends with, even if you're not going to buy anything from them. There's loads of information that they have that you can get from them. Now, I'm not saying make friends with these people for the sake of just getting from them. Yeah. Make sure you have something to give. Now, one of the things that I did with the agents in my local area was I would do a leaflet drop in different areas looking for properties. And I would get people calling me to say, right, I want to sell my house and this is the price. I'm not moving from this price. I would know that that's not a deal that would work for me, but I could take that lead to an agent and say, right, there's this property here, this person is looking to sell, you might be able to help them. Okay. Now, by giving away something that's not of value to me, but it's of value to them, we can actually connect from that point. And they will be more willing to listen to me. And therefore, I can have a conversation that can give me insight to certain areas, and I can get to find out about properties before they even hit the market. So build rapport with property agents in your area. It's a very good point to make. Next slide. I told everyone what I was doing. So a lot of people get very nervous about this, right? Especially when you're starting out. You get a good understanding of what you're looking to do, but the value is in everyone knowing what you're doing. There's no point in you saying, do you know what? I want to do rent to rent. I want to do service accommodation, but you don't tell anyone. You hold it back and you're thinking, do you know what? Because I don't fully understand, I don't want people to know about it. I say, tell everybody what you're doing. So if you're actually working full-time now, and in the future you want to be a full-time investor or full-time property, and you're working doing something else now, whether you're a barber, you're a dentist, you're whatever, you are a dentist full-time, and this is how you usually introduce yourself. What you should be saying is, I'm an investor who happens to be a dentist. I'm an investor who happens to be a barber, right? So you're an investor first, and then people will say, oh, investor, what do you do? That opens a conversation, right? Everywhere you go, you sit down in a hair shop and you're doing hair. You guys are talking about, oh, what have you been doing? What was your weekend? What you up to? Tell them what you've been doing. I went to a viewing. Viewing what? A house. Are you looking to buy a house? Yeah, that's what I do. Open a conversation. Tell everyone what you're doing. Become that property person. Whenever people have property problems, they will say, oh, that person kept talking about property. Let me go tell them. Leads will come to you. You may sound crazy for a little while, and I did. I still do, to be fair. But a lot of leads will come from that. So I absolutely recommend that if you're going to be doing property full time, tell everyone. It doesn't matter how crazy you sound. Those who think you sound crazy, they're not the people you need anyway. So let them go away. The people who need you will appreciate the information you've got to share. Next slide. Social media presence, which is another thing that freaks people out. right? So you tell someone to record a video of what you're doing, post it on Facebook so people see what you're doing, right? And people are like, "Ooh, my mom is on Facebook. Oh my gosh, my friends are on Facebook." Yeah, they're the people you want to advertise to. Let them know that you're doing property, because everyone needs property. It doesn't matter who you are or what you're doing. Everyone needs property. Everyone needs to live somewhere. And if there is someone who needs somewhere to live and they want to find out about it, you want them to come to you. Even if you might not be the one who has the solution, you might know someone who has the solution in your network, and you become that connector. And absolutely tell everyone what you're doing through social media, because most people, what they do now, it's like being on your phone is so addictive now. It's the first thing that you do, right? We used to be in a position at some time in the past where you wake up in the morning, the first thing you do is like go to the toilet and brush your teeth. Now, before any of that nonsense, you're on your phone for half an hour, right? It's like nowadays people will Google how to get to their own toilet. So you're on your phone first before you do anything. So if people are going to be on their phones, make sure you're in their mind space. When they go on Facebook to find out something that other people are doing, make sure they're seeing you doing your business and talking about this whole property thing, and they will bring leads to you. Next slide. And then networking, right? So the networking, you've got the virtual element of networking, which is exactly what we're doing right now. Yeah. You're connecting with people virtually. You're getting to know other people. You can actually connect now with the people that you're seeing. For those that are on Zoom, you can see other people, you can connect. This is a great platform. You can find out more about these guys and actually get to contact them and find out what they do. And you can find out a lot more about what it is this whole property thing is about. So networking virtually is one option, but also going to the networking events. In many different places in the UK, you've got networking events happening at breakfast, happening at lunch, happening at dinner, whatever. People will just meet up for any reason, especially now that the world has been open. People could not wait to get out of their own houses. They're just going out to meet up with anybody. Yeah, make the most of that, because what many people think is, I can't start in property. I need to raise funds. Where do I raise funds from? I need to find an investor. But because you've labeled them an investor, in your head, you're thinking it's this dude wearing a really nice tie and driving a really fancy car. Investors are people. So how would you know that this person is rich, that one isn't? There's people who spend a lot of money to look rich. And then there's the wealthy people who don't care how they look, but they've got the money. And if you eliminate someone and say that doesn't look like an investor, that is your loss. So connect with anyone and everyone. Imagine, or sort of like, just assume everyone you speak to is someone you can work with as a joint venture partner, is someone you can work with as a lender, someone you can work with as a vendor. It could be anyone in your platform. So treat them like someone you're definitely going to need, because you have no idea each person's story, right? So don't assume that because they're driving a fancy car, they're very wealthy. Okay. So networking is one of the things that I did, and I did quite a lot of it. Now, all of this stuff that I've just pointed out in my 9-month journey, I wasn't doing specifically to build what I actually have built now. Okay, so this is something I was doing just accidentally as we were going along. I would go to more training courses because I enjoyed the first one, and then realized there's a benefit to going to these courses. I started building rapport with agents because I talk too much. That's one of the reasons. I just talk to people, and then I realized the benefit later on. Now, because all of this it was more accidental for me. That's why it took so long. But now that I've learned that this was actually very beneficial, and now you can actually specifically go and do these things to get results rather than accidentally go into it like I did. Okay, hopefully that helps. If we can go to the next slide. Okay, so going into rent to rent. I don't know how many people we've got here. If people have access to the messaging on Zoom, how many people have actually heard of rent to rent? If you just drop a message on the messaging here on the chat. Have you ever heard of rent to rent? This is the interactive part, guys. What a liar. Okay, thank you. I'm seeing the messages come through. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go through it for that person who's never ever heard of it. So for those that know what this is, we're just going to go through it anyway and repeat some of the stuff that we already know about. So rent to rent itself, it's usually talked about as a strategy, as a property strategy. Now, we don't see rent to rent as a property strategy. We call it an acquisition tool. Now, the reason I say that is the strategy is what you do with the property once you've had it. There's two ways of taking control of the property. You can either buy it or you can rent it. Yeah. So if you're going to buy it, what you're going to do with it after that, you're going to let it. So that's the buy to let. That's the one strategy because you're going to rent it out at the other end. And then on the other end, you can either rent it to HMOs, you can rent it to service accommodation, you can rent it to social housing, but the rental part of it is not the strategy. It's just an acquisition tool. Yeah. But most people will talk about rent to rent as a strategy, and that's okay. Okay, so rent to rent is a way of controlling someone else's property to generate cash flow. You can actually make money out of property without buying it. And this is one of the most prominent strategies to create this cash flow. So what most people would do, or what most people's understanding is, which is where I was before I found out about it myself, was you go to work and work very hard, start saving your money until you get to a point where your savings can buy you a house with that deposit. Okay, that's the only way you can get involved in property. Now, the joy of rent to rent is you can actually get involved in property even if you don't have money yourself, right? You can actually control these properties, generate the cash flow using other people's houses. And once you've generated cash flow from other people's houses, guess what? The cash flow you've generated, you can then use it to buy your own house, yeah, without having to depend on a job. So this is what rent to rent is about. So we're going to go into two main strategies that most people will talk about when it comes to rent to rent. And if we just go to the next slide, please. So just as a quick illustration first of the difference between actually buying the house and actually doing the rent to rent. So firstly, the secret to success is to own nothing but control everything. This was said a long time ago by Nelson Rockefeller. And most people who know a bit about history will know the Rockefeller family, which is one of the wealthiest family ever. And this was the principle that they were talking about. It's owning nothing and controlling everything. So rent to rent is a form of it. An example is Airbnb. Right, it's a property. It's an accommodation platform that does not own any properties. Uber is a transportation platform that does not own any transportation vehicles, right? It's controlling the market without having to own the assets. So, yeah, next slide. Right, if we can just go next as well, please. So this is an illustration of a purchase versus rent to rent. So I was talking earlier on about most people understand the concept of saving up money to buy a house. Okay, now this is just the difference between buying the house or renting it out. Okay, so if you look on the left to start with, so let's start by making an assumption that the rent in this area is £1,000 a month. And if you're going to be using serviced accommodation, which I mentioned earlier on is commonly known as Airbnb, if you use service accommodation income for this area at a general occupancy, and let's say you're going to generate £2,500 a month, just keep it stagnant. And let's say this property's bills is around £500. I'm keeping the numbers nice and simple here. So to buy this beautiful house, let's imagine this house is worth 100,000. You have to raise a deposit of 25. And usually for most lenders, you have to raise 25% of the value of the property. Okay. So for this case, it's £100,000 house. It's you're going to need to raise a deposit of 25,000. So for stamp duty, land and tax, it's 3% that we use, which is going to be £3,000. And the legals, it's safer to just assume it's going to be 1% of whatever the value is. So in total, to buy a house that's worth 100,000, you're going to need to raise £29,000 to actually buy it, right? Let's assume the mortgage is about 500. Okay, now based on the assumption that we've made up at the top that the income is going to be 2,500, the bills are going to be £500. So For mortgage, you're going to pay 500, then you're going to pay the bills of 500, outgoing is 1,000, incoming is 2,500. So if you buy the house, you're making £1,500 a month. Yeah, I'm hoping it's making sense for you guys so far. Right. The difference now is if you're going to rent it, you're not paying a mortgage, you're paying the rent. Now the rent is £1,000, okay? And the bills are £500. It's the same property. Therefore, with the income of 2,500, your cash flow is £1,000. However, the difference is in taking the property on, we've assumed about £7,000, which is a realistic figure. And this entails setting up the property, buying the furniture, if it needs a little bit of work inside, the first month's rent and the deposit. And that will be around £7,000 on average for certain properties across the UK. Now, looking at these two pictures, you may be thinking the cash flow is higher at the property that you purchased. Yes, you're making an extra £500 there because usually the mortgage is less than the rent. And the cash flow on the right-hand side is £1,000. However, for those who are very smart, you've already seen the major difference there. If we go to the next slide, please, 𝐿𝐻𝐫𝐿. The major difference is how much money you've paid up front, right? So to purchase the property, you have to raise £29,000 just to make £1,500 a month. But with that same £29,000, you can get 4 properties. Therefore, you're making £4,000 a month with the same amount of money. Now, the whole idea is with the rent to rent, you're now making £4,000 a month. You can start putting this £4,000 a month to the side to get to a point where you can raise that £29,000 and buy the house. Now, these houses are now buying the house for you, rather than you having to save up the money that you've been working hard at work. Now, as you can imagine, if you do it this way, the lifespan of being able to buy a house is shortened drastically. Now, the whole concept of work really hard at work, start saving up. Everyone here on the panel knows, if you're old enough, you know that saving money is not an easy thing to do, and it takes a very long time. So if you're lucky enough to save up enough money to buy a house, the process, the length is going to take from the point that you start saving up again to buy house number 2 is a very long time, right? And as we go along, initially, it's just a beautiful situation where now you're students and you've been renting, now you want to buy a house, you meet your partner. Look, the gorgeous Barry and Kushal, they are now together and they get married and they buy a house, and now they start the process all over again. And they think, you know what, because we managed to do it in about 7 years, we're going to do another 7 years. And then a child gets involved, and then a second one gets involved. And then someone loses their job, and then they find a new job, and then they decide they want to move somewhere else. Circumstances keep changing, and all those savings that they thought they were going to make in 7 years is going to take them 17 years. And then guess what? The house prices have changed. So the £29,000 to buy the 100 grand property, you now need at least 60 grand to buy that same house, because that house is now worth 200,000. Now, for those people who have already tried this principle, that makes sense to you because you've gone through it. However, if you're already controlling the properties and you're running rent to rent, the house prices don't matter, because you're not buying them. You're just generating cash flow from someone else's property. And that will just continue. Prices go up, prices go down. Doesn't matter. As long as there's demand in whatever strategy you're doing, you're still going to be making money from them. Okay? Next slide, please. Right, so I did mention that we're going to be talking about 2 main strategies. So there is also supported living, there is social housing, there's all sorts of different other strategies that you can do rent to rent on, but we're just going to talk about these 2 main ones. So one is HMO, which is houses in multiple occupancy. This is the concept of taking on a property, example, a 5-bedroom house. Instead of putting one family in there, you actually rent the house per room. Okay, so you take on the property on a rental, you pay rent for a 5-bedroom house as a market rent for a 5-bedroom, but then you put one tenant in each room and they pay an extra, a certain amount, which is the market rate for those rooms. And in most cases, or in every case, if you've done your due diligence right, you will make a profit. Okay, so example, 5-bedroom house, and the rent is £1,000 in this particular area. And instead of actually just putting a family in who will pay 1,000, you will take on the property, pay the 1,000, pay the bills of £500, and then each person in the 5 rooms will pay you £500 each. Okay. Now, once the rooms are full, you're getting paid 2,500. You're paying 1,000 to the landlord. You're paying 500 bills. You're now making £1,000 from that property. Okay, so this is the concept of HMOs. Now, HMOs come with their own challenge. In certain areas in the UK, they are regulated, and therefore you need to apply for a license. You need to make sure you're compliant. There's all sorts of regulations that come with HMOs, but it's a great strategy to generate cash flow with if you've taken it on as a rent-to-rent. It's important to do your due diligence on the numbers. It's important to do your due diligence on the demand, because in HMOs, you can either take it on for students or you can take it on for professionals. Now, when I say due diligence, do your research. There's no point in taking on a property and say it's a student property for HMOs, and that place has no colleges, has no universities. Where do students come from? Yeah. Do your due diligence, understand what demand is in there, understand the market rates for the rooms, understand the market rates for the property as a whole, and then look at the numbers before you even approach a landlord, before you even approach anyone. You need to understand your numbers first. Okay, that's HMOs. On the right-hand side, I've actually used a picture of one of our service accommodation units in Coventry. So service accommodation, I've mentioned a couple of times, is commonly known as Airbnb, right? I don't like using that term. I just use it because people understand it. So service accommodation, this is where you actually treat the whole house as you would a hotel. Okay, so you don't have tenants, you've got guests that check in and check out. It's a short-term let accommodation strategy. So you make the house look really nice, high standards, and it's sort of a competition in the market with hotels. Now, service accommodation, once you've done it right, is no competition with hotels, because hotels don't have kitchens, right? So you can actually give a whole house, someone can stay there for a short period of time, no contracts to sign, therefore you're not tied in for a long period. And the guests go in, stay for as long as they need to, and they go out. Okay, it's a great strategy because now you're no longer actually charging rent to a tenant, you're charging a nightly rate to a guest. If, again, you do due diligence right, understand what your nightly rates for the area and for the type of property is, once you've taken on the same property we were talking about, where your rent is £1,000, your bills are 500, you can generate over £3,000 if you've done your due diligence right, where you still have a massive amount of income that will come through that property that you don't actually own. Now, the challenge with serviced accommodation compared to HMOs is every time someone goes in or goes out, a clean has to be done. And that's where your biggest cost is going to be, right? The cleaning cost is a lot higher than it would be for an HMO. Therefore, you have to consider the fact that after you've paid the rent, you still yet to pay the bills, and then you have to pay the cleaning cost on top of that, but you still need to make an income. You still need to make a profit. If you're not going to be making a profit on any of these strategies, then you're not running a business. You've got a massive liability, okay? So this is the joys of service accommodation. But I can tell you now, both strategies work. Right? They do work. You just make sure that you're doing them right. If we go to the next slide, please. Right. So where do you find these deals? So for anyone who's actually there thinking, right, great strategies here, Muzzie, you're talking about some good stuff. Now, where on earth do I find them? Right. We're just going to go through these now. Now, if you're ever in a position where you have to rent a property or you have to go into a new house, you've found a new job in a different area and you're looking for a property to live in, right? The same places that you would go for to find that house to live in are the same places you would go to find these properties to actually take on for rent to rent. The same ways that you find those properties that you're looking to live in is the same way you would go and find these properties to manage as well. What differs is what you actually say when you get in there. Okay, so online platforms, top, absolute top. Now everything is going virtual. I spoke about, I made it a joke about the fact that the first thing you do when you wake up is play around on your phone. Yeah, most people will say, I'm just switching my alarm off. but half an hour later, they're still switching the alarm off on Instagram. Yeah. But people actually live on their phones now. Everything is virtual. So most of your deals, most of your opportunities are going to come online. And one of the best ones, well, I say one off, there's many of them. Rightmove, Zoopla, Spare Room, Gumtree, on the market. There's all sorts of different platforms where people will advertise their properties for rent. Okay. Now, these types of properties, when you're taking them on for rent to rent, most of them, barely any property will come on the market and advertise itself as rent to rent or advertise itself as company led. They never do that. Okay. What's common is a property that's being rented out for a family to move in. That's the one you're going for. You go for that property, and once you've actually come to the landlord, to the agent, you present your service, you present what it is that you can do for them. And that's the point you actually get these deals. Right, next one. Property agents. I spoke earlier on about making friends with agents. That's all agents, letting agents, sourcing agents, anyone who's got anything to do with property, who may have access to these properties. Make friends with them, talk to them, understand how they do what they do, understand what they need, and see how your services, how you can actually help them. So whoever it is that you actually need, give them what they need, and they will give you what you need. Yeah. The best way to help yourself is to help others. And it sounds weird, but the best way to help yourself is to help others. So help them with whatever they're looking for, and you'll be surprised how many times they'll come and bombard you with deals, and you'll get to a point where you're like, guys, slow down. I don't want your deals anymore, right? And that will be a good problem to have, by the way. Right, next one. The good old direct to vendor. So I'll hear a lot of people saying that, well, letting agents will take a percentage. So because they're taking a percentage, I'm losing part of the deal. So I'm going to need to find someone directly and get rid of these extra percentages that I have to pay for, right? There's a point there. However, that shouldn't stop you from actually going to speak to these guys, because they have access to portfolios. I would rather have 50% of something than 100% of nothing. Okay, so the next one is direct to vendor. So you can do guerrilla marketing, we call it. Send out leaflets, write letters directly. So HMO is one of the strategies I was talking about. Because it's regulated and people have to apply for a license to have an HMO, there's a register in each council that points out how many HMOs are there, who's running these HMOs, who owns them. So you can actually go to the council and ask for the HMO register. Okay, now HMO register will give you that list, and you can actually send a letter to all of them and advertise and kind of see how you can help them. You may be thinking, well, if someone is running an HMO, what am I saying to them? Okay, why am I even going to them? Now, you'll be surprised how many people are running HMOs, one, the wrong way, two, they absolutely hate it, three, they could have been handed over these things and they have no idea who to give them to. And they would really appreciate someone saying, do you know what? We run HMOs, and I was wondering if we can work together. We run HMOs, wondering if we can actually take yours over. So many people have had these letters and actually thought, I am so glad you reached out because I absolutely hate this, right? Property is not made for everyone. And each of the strategies, you will find once you actually get in that this one I like, this one I do not like. Even though I'm still getting paid, I don't like it. Now, most people actually leave their jobs to come and do property because it's advertised in a so like eureka way where everything is beautiful. You know, it's all lovely. Tenants are amazing, guys. No tenants give you any problems. They pay rent on time. Sometimes they even pay you more just for you to go have a drink. Never, right? So you don't want to be jumping into a strategy that you don't understand, that doesn't suit your personality, because you're going to end up taking on another job and you're going to hate it, lose passion for it, and you start doing things wrong. Okay. So leaflets is another way as well. Now, this does not mean you should go around and do leaflets yourself all the time, right? You need to value your time. It's good for you to go and do it just for an experience and understanding the streets and getting to know your local area. But value your time. There's leaflet delivery companies that you can utilize. Create the leaflet the way that you want to, and get these leaflets to be delivered and get them to call you, and the leads will start coming your way. Now, these are how you actually find these deals. Some of them will say they want to sell the property. Some of them will say they want to rent it. Some of them might actually want both. They might be thinking, I'm looking to sell this property, but probably not now, maybe in about 5 years, and I'm not sure what to do with it now. You can offer to manage that property and also agree a purchase price in the future with that same person. So all sorts of options will actually come from that point. So I would recommend you do some leafleting and send letters. Social media presence, and I think I've already touched on social media. For those that are still scared of using social media to advertise what you do, I would suggest you start slowly working at it. Get yourself involved in this, because that's where the future is. It's where the present is right now. Social media is how you market yourself. Social media is how you market your business. Get yourself in that and slowly get yourself comfortable with it, because that's where things are going. Okay, next one, networking, the last one, right? So we always talk about property as a business. You know, the word business is just overused. Okay, behind every property, behind every deal, behind every job, behind every sort of title is a person. Okay, we have to understand that property is not a business, it's a people business, right? An investor is a person, a vendor is a person, a letting agent is a person. Everyone that you need to do everything that you need to do to make the money in property is a person. So therefore, networking is one of the most important things you want to do. You want to have a network. Now, most people, you'll hear people say your network is your net worth. Yeah, there's truth in that. Okay, now it's an effective network that becomes your net worth, because there's no point in just populating your phone with all sorts of phone numbers that you don't need, that are not going to help you. But you want to get to a point where an opportunity comes up, you know exactly who to speak to. You know exactly who to reach out to, whether it's to raise funds or to get information on how to make that opportunity work. You want to get to a point where as soon as you face a challenge as well, you know who to speak to, who can help you understand that that challenge is actually an opportunity and what do I do with it. And all this comes from networking. And when you network, what do you do? Again, same thing that I said when I was talking about agents. Find out what people need. The more you help people with what they need, the more you will consequently actually get the help that you require. Yeah. So just go out looking to see what people need and see how you can help them. That way you don't need to try to figure out what to say. You don't need to try to sell yourself in any way. Or, hi, I'm a property investor. Look, I've got this business card. It's nice and fancy. You don't want to be going around presenting yourself that way. Get to know people, find out what they do, find out what they need, let them know how you can help them with what they need, and you'll be surprised how much you will get from just doing that activity. All right, next slide. Right, we have the skeptics in the world who are thinking, yeah, but so many things that could go wrong, Muzzie. I haven't started this because my friend told me this happened with their property and that happened with their property. So let's go through what could go wrong, right? So I'm just going to ask you to just go through all of them at the same time, right? Okay, so let's stop there. This is the list, yeah? Now, the skeptics in the room will have another list that is twice as long, yeah? But we'll go with these ones here. So no or not enough guests booking the property, okay? So we're talking about service accommodation here. What if there's not enough people like booking my property and I've taken this property on a rent to rent? I still have to pay the landlords their rent, I still have to pay the bills, but I've not made enough money. Where am I going to get that money, right? Yeah, very valid thing to worry about. There's too much upfront cost. It's nice for you, Muzzie, to say, yeah, instead of £29,000 to buy the house, you only need £7,000 to set it up, but I still don't have the £7,000. Where am I going to get that from? Yeah, very valid point. I've got no money. Landlords pulling out of the agreement. What if I spend my £7,000 to set up this house and now it looks beautiful and I'm about to run the deal and the landlord said, I want my property back now. Thanks for making it look nice. Bye. What if that happens, right? No profits even at high occupancy. Imagine you have the property actually occupied for the whole month, but you're still not making a profit. Yeah, it actually happens. Few people actually go through that. Bad guest booking the property, and I can already hear people now screaming, yes, people trash properties. You know, they go in and they break stuff and then they run away. They have these parties, got drug people going in there and doing all sorts of stuff. Yeah, that can happen too. It's too time consuming. I've got a full-time job. So you might have that person who's thinking, yeah, I want to do this. It looks nice, it looks interesting, but I've got a full-time job. You know, I haven't got time to be doing all of this stuff. You've got all these guests coming in, coming out, managing the cleaners, managing the maintenance team. How am I going to do that? I barely have time to do anything right now with my job. Again, all of these are problems. These are all things that could actually happen. Now, what can you do about them is the question. So we're going to go through this now. And you might have another list of things that you can think of. Let's just go through these ones because we've only got one day, right? So let's just go through the next slide, please. So let's do this one by one. So if you just press next, please, 𝐿𝐻𝐻. So on the first issue, what can we do? Next. Due diligence in marketing. So we're talking about what if you actually have the property and you can't actually make enough income? You can't make enough income to pay your rent, you can't make enough income to pay the bills. What can you do about it? Now, there's two things you can do about it, and there's two things I will recommend you do about it. The first one is before you even take the property on, and that's the due diligence. Okay. Does the strategy you're looking to do work in the area that you're going into? Yeah, I'm doing HMOs and I'm going to do HMOs for students. Oh, fantastic, Muzzie. Where? Oh, I'm going to do it in this area here. Right. Where the students are going to come from? Are there students in that area, or are those students going to have to drive for an hour to get to uni? Is that even realistic? Is that going to work? Right? So it's an HMO for students and it's right next to the university. Fantastic. Now that you know that the students are there, what's the market rate saying? What is the rent for the property itself? And what is the room rent for that area as well? And then look to analyze what you could be getting compared to what you have to pay out, right? So if you actually understand that, you will know whether it's possible to actually get a profit before you actually take anything on. Okay, and that's what you want to understand before you even go and actually make an offer. So a quick example for HMOs, I mentioned that you've got to pay the rent, you've got to pay the bills, and then you're going to need to get paid as well. Those are the three aspects when it comes to HMOs. Yeah, the landlord, the government, I say the government, all the bills, the government, and yourself. And for those that have heard this before and there's truth to it, you have to pay yourself first. Okay. Now, when you're looking at the concept of paying yourself first, what we use is what we call the 1.5 rule. Now, the 1.5 rule says if a room rent is £500, your profit needs to be £500 times 1.5. Okay, now this is usually like in the West Midlands going up north. In London, that's very difficult, next to impossible. So we'll probably make it like a 1.2. So if a room rent is £500, your profit should be about 750. So out of the three things, once the income comes in, 750 needs to go to you. There's no negotiation with the government. Yeah, the bills are what the bills are. Okay, you can make some changes as you go along to try to minimize it as much as possible, but the bills are what the bills are. What's left then is the landlord's rent, and that's what the offer is. That's where you make that offer. If you understand this during the due diligence, what the rent would be is what you offer. Now, once you've done the calculation of the 1.5 rule, and what's left for the landlord is actually matching or is higher than what the landlord is asking for, then you're looking at a great deal. Yeah, you go for it. If what the calculation is and the rent is lower than what the landlord is asking for, you go and make that offer and say, right, from the calculation we're looking at, yeah, and explain to them how you get into it. Landlords and all people actually love the concept of transparency and honesty. Because if they're saying, I'm looking for 1,250, and you say, I'm offering 850, and you haven't given any logic behind it. It just sounds like you're trying to take away from them. It just sounds like you're looking to scam them. But make them understand how you've done the calculation. Worst case scenario, they can say, no, that doesn't work for me. And that's fine, right? It's fine. You've been honest about it and you've explained how this works. You're taking this property on as a rent-to-rent. You're a company-let business taking on a property, and you're going to be taking care of the maintenance, and you're going to be taking care of the management. They're not having to pay any of that, and you're making it hands-free for them completely. Make them understand that that's what you're offering, and this is where most of their money is actually going to be coming from. Because if they put the family in there, they still have to pay for the maintenance, they still have to pay 10% for the management. So even if the rent is 1,250, they are not actually going to get 1,250. Right? So make them understand that and explain it in a very transparent way so they get where you're coming from. In most cases, you will actually get that deal. So that's the first thing on due diligence, and understanding your calculation and explaining it to whoever you're talking to. The next part is marketing. There's no point in getting a great deal when no one knows the property is available. Yeah? I've seen most people actually running an HMO and saying we're struggling to get tenants. We've advertised the property online, but I walk past the property and there's nothing on the property that says this property is available. Nothing. Anyone can walk past. The people who need rooms in that property live in that area. They're walking around that area every day. Don't expect that people will always go and spare room to look for property. They are walking around and they will get to the area. How many times have you gone to an area and thought, I want to live in this area, or I'm looking for a property in this area, and you go to the area and you drive around? Yeah. If there's nothing on the property that says this property is available for rent, they're not going to come to you. It doesn't matter what it looks like. You don't have to have a fancy board that's actually stuck down on the ground. You can put a piece of paper that says room for rent. Contact this number. Yeah. So marketing is as important as your due diligence. You've done a due diligence, you understand that it works, you've done your numbers, you've made the right offer, the property deal is fantastic. But if you don't do the marketing, it will stay empty. Okay? So that's the first thing that you want to be doing to alleviate the issue to reduce the chances of you getting a deal that won't actually pay you. I hope that makes sense. So the next one, please. So the next one was too much upfront cost. We're talking about the $7,000 for taking on this property deal. Now, these are the things that you can do. So one, you can negotiate rent and deposit free periods, and also you can use credit. Now, what do I mean? When you take on a property and you're looking to run it for service accommodation, you're looking to run it as an HMO, and the property needs some work, or it needs to be furnished, or it needs a bit of maybe a lick of paint, maybe change of carpets, or any stuff like that that you do as part of the setup, what you're actually doing is increasing the value of the landlord's property. Okay, so in your conversations as you come in, you are not asking for a rent-free period, because that just sounds like you're taking. Okay, if you say I'm looking for a rent-free period, it sounds like you're taking from someone. But if you go in there and say, right, look, these are the standards that we work with, show them pictures that you've actually worked with before, or even work with someone who's done it before, and say, these are the standards that we work with. Would it be okay for the next 3 or 4 weeks for me to change your property into these standards before we get started? Now, I'm practically asking for the same thing, but it's how I present it. I'm actually showing that I'm helping you by improving the standards of your own property before we get started. Is it okay if we just do this for about 3 or 4 weeks and then we can get started? In most cases, they're happy with it because of the standards that you're showing. Two of the main things that landlords want are pay my rent and take care of my property. Those are the two main things. They don't want anything else. Now, if you're going to throw in the third thing of making their property better than what it looks like, that's a bonus. They love that. Absolutely love that. So you can actually use that. Now, the deposit free, especially for HMOs, what usually happens is a tenant comes in, pays you the deposit, right? Now, that deposit is doing exactly the same thing that you're going to be doing with the deposit that you're paying the landlord. It's the same deposit, right? So why not actually create a situation where the tenants are paying into a deposit protection scheme that the landlord has access to? That way, you're not actually paying anything. So that's a deposit-free setup where you're not actually having to pay a deposit. So you can set something like that up to start off with. And then when I say use credit, you've got companies like IKEA that will allow you to buy everything that you need and you pay them back in about 18 months on an interest-free setup. Yeah. So you can actually get everything that you want. And instead of actually calculating the £750 profit, you're now paying a £60 a month figure for the furniture that you've used. So you've just reduced your profit, but you haven't paid anything up front. So the setup I've just talked about today, you could actually get an HMO for nothing. Does that make sense? Well, Parry and 𝐿 are nodding, so it must make sense. Okay, so the next one, landlords filling out the agreement. I'll just quickly go through this one. Align your agreements to protect your finance. So when you're actually signing management agreements, you want to make sure it has information in there. For example, a break clause. Okay, you can set up a break clause, 6 months, 12-month break clause, whatever it is, whatever works for you and the landlord, and mention that if anyone leaves the agreement between this period, the other person is liable for paying for the expenses. Okay, so if you've done your calculations that I'm going to be making £500 a month, okay, and I've spent £5,000, I know I need 10 months to make my money back. So you can set up a break clause within 10 months to say, if you, Mr. or Mrs. Landlord, landlady, cancel the agreement or want to take the property back anytime between this, you're liable to pay me what I've actually spent in the property, and that protects your finance. Right, something as simple as that. But you can actually agree anything with the landlord. Now, these agreements, there's templates going around everywhere. What I always say is put things onto paper, sign contracts, sign agreements. However, don't depend on them as a first thing. Create rapport with the person you're working with so that at the first point of having a problem, you want to have a conversation. Right? You don't want to go into a conversation with, well, actually on clause 4.4, this is your responsibility. You're going to war straight away, right? You want to go in with the conversation first, create rapport with them and say, like, look, I've got a situation at the moment. This property is not really performing as best as I wanted to, and I'm not entirely sure what to do here. We can either see if we can maybe reduce the rent for a couple of months and see what we can do, or I'm probably going to have to leave. I don't mind leaving the furniture. Just discuss things with them and see how you can work things out. You'll be surprised how understanding people are. Yeah, when the COVID initially hit in 2020, some of our landlords were open to just not taking any rent for 3-4 months because they understand the situation. And most people are very understanding. And we can work something out in the future to repay for that period, because you get that no one is coming to the property. There's no money being made. So let's work together through this challenge here, because this challenge is affecting both of us, right? So we never actually looked at the agreements. We just agreed and disagreed with the landlords verbally and just saw what we can actually do going forward. And I would recommend everyone does that. Okay. The next thing, no profits even at high occupancy. Goes back to the due diligence, right? Go back to the due diligence. Just because the landlord is asked for X amount per month for rent doesn't mean that's exactly what you need to pay. Do your due diligence, calculate the numbers of what works. And if it does not work at what they're asking for, make the offer that works for you. And if they say no, great, it's okay. Walk away. It's not a deal, right? I know we usually get hung up on actually having a deal. And it's funny, I'm the one saying this because I usually do this myself. We really want to just have the deal. It's nice to come back and say, hey guys, I've got a deal. And it's not a deal and I'm losing money every month. So you need to be careful about the numbers and understand what they are, make the right calculations and make the correct rental offers. Okay, next one. Right, the bad guests. Okay, so this is something that happens quite a lot. Now, I say quite a lot, it's not quite a lot, it's very rarely happens. It's just unfortunate that whenever something negative happens, we remember it a lot more than anything else, right? You will have out of 100 things, 10 of them are bad, But we will talk so much about the 10 that have gone bad and completely ignore the other 90 that have gone good. It's just natural, it's nature, really. So if you go on social media and people talk about the experiences when it comes to service accommodation and rent and tenants and all sorts, you'll probably hear the most about the bad things. And it's the bad things that get most attention, right? It's just unfortunate, but it's not actually common. It's very, very low in chances. Now, I say take the necessary measures to reduce the chances. Okay, I use the words reduce the chances purposefully because it's not something that you can actually completely eradicate, right? People with bad intentions can find ways, which is why we have the police, right? If everyone had good intentions, wouldn't need policing in any way whatsoever. So no matter what setups you have, you will find people who will find a way around it. Okay, so just take the necessary measures to reduce the chances of things like this happening. And when they do happen, do not be disheartened. It just happens, right? Reset your property up and move on. Okay, learn from whatever's happened. See what you can do to make sure that doesn't happen again and move on very quickly. Okay, next one. So the last one is learn for the purpose of outsourcing and systemize. Now, this was down to the fact that I've got a full-time job. I can't do this because I don't have any time. What do I do, Muzzie? I haven't got time to be doing this stuff. Now, outsourcing and systemizing. So the first one will be the systemizing element. See what you can do and utilize systems to reduce the time slot that you have to give out to a business. Now, apps and emails being done automatically, all of that reduces your physical time. And then also outsourcing, just giving the job to someone else, virtual assistants, operation managers. You can actually run a business without running a business. It's always an advisory thing. Whenever you're starting a business, you're most likely going to be doing everything, right? And as the business grows, you want to be letting go of things. And eventually you want to be in a position where you're working on your business, not in your business, okay? Your business shouldn't be your second job. Okay, right, next slide. Right, we're coming to an end. For those people who are thinking you've been talking for too long now, Muzzie, we're coming to an end now, right? So I've got top three closing remarks that I just want to go through with you guys. So firstly, start with why. Now this is a book, right? For those that like reading, there's a book called Start With Why by Simon Sinek. I would recommend everyone goes through that book. It's a fantastic book where he talks about the concept of the golden circle. So I would recommend you read that. And for those that don't like reading, he's got a YouTube video about it, guys. You can watch it on YouTube, you lazy people. So feel free to just go on the YouTube TED Talk. It's really good information. Now, the reason I say start with why is in your journey, you want to understand why you're looking to do it. It's amazing to talk about the fact that, oh, I've got all these properties, I'm running all this stuff, I'm not working full time, I can wake up and do whatever I want. And it doesn't work like that, by the way, but I can wake up and do whatever I want. I'm in property. The question you might want to ask yourself before you actually start property or start anything is, why on earth am I doing this to start with, right? This is not a question you want to be answering in front of anyone, okay? So, Kushal Pari, not together, yeah? Separately, on your own, in front of the mirror, on your own. Why am I doing this? Okay, now the answer needs to be very meaningful to yourself. The reason I say this is, like anything else, you're going to be facing challenges and it's going to be very difficult. For those who've been in property for a while, they will tell you, Kushal and Pari are smiling now, but they know this stuff is not easy, okay? It's very painful. Now, when you go through these challenges, the first thing you're going to be asking yourself, and it's natural, the first thing you're going to ask yourself is, why on earth am I putting myself through this? Yeah? Now, if you don't have that answer at the point that you ask yourself that question, that's the point of failure. That's the point you're going to turn around and think, you know what? I'm going back to my manufacturing job. Yeah, I'm going back to whatever I was doing. It's not worth it. What you want to get to is, once you get that challenge and you ask yourself, why on earth am I going through this? All of the answers that you've gone through already are starting to drop in. I'm doing this for my kids. I'm doing this for my family. I'm doing this to better myself. I'm doing this for this. And once you have those reasons, you will find a way through that challenge, around that challenge, over that challenge. Whatever you need to do, you will get through it because you've got a very good reason why. So start with, why am I doing this, before you actually do anything else. Make sense? Next one. So the second one is hang around the barbers. I'll explain, guys. I'll explain. Hang around the barbers. Now, this is something I actually heard from someone else, and I found it really funny. It was actually Les Brown. And the saying was, if you hang around the barbers for long enough, sooner or later, you're going to get a haircut. I found that really funny. And the concept behind this is, if you're looking to be a property investor, hang around with property investors. And not only that, you want to be very careful with who you're hanging around with right now. Yeah. Now, this is not me asking people to be rude and get rid of people, but be very careful who you're spending your time with right now, because people will take the energy. You will actually start working in a case of osmosis. What other people are thinking, what other people are doing is what you will consequently end up doing, whether you're consciously thinking about it or not. So be very careful who you're spending your time with, and make sure they are allocated or aligned with the thought process that you are aligned with. They're going towards the direction that you're going with. You don't want to find yourself in a position where the most people that you're spending time with are going the opposite direction. Okay, so hang around the barbers. Be careful who you're spending your time with. Okay, last one. Success is in the journey. I absolutely love this. Now, most people will be looking at a case of, I'm starting out in property, so my level of success is getting that deal. Yeah. So you actually make your success a destination. Once I get that deal, then I'm successful. Once I make $1 million, then I'm successful. How many people have we seen getting the deals and still unhappy? Getting the success in millions, they're still unhappy. And that the reason behind that is we're not appreciating the progress. Yeah. The success is in the journey. Everything that you do that takes you towards that goal that you've set yourself is success. Okay. I've gone to speak to an agent for the very first time today. I might have sounded like an idiot going through it, but I've done it. I celebrate that. That's success. I've gone to my first viewing. I celebrate that. I've been successful today. Everything that you do, even if it's a case of for the first time ever, I've actually sat down and planned my day. I've never planned my day before, but I've done it today. Even if I didn't manage to do anything on the list, but I've planned my day. That's success. You celebrate it. So if you start celebrating success in the journey, you will find yourself pushing yourself towards your success. But if you make success a destination far in the future, you will actually run out of energy. It's like trying to run in a straight line and you can see the end of the line right all the way at the back end. You will actually just run out of energy, which is why with people that actually run for long periods, you've got milestones. Yeah. You've got a point of, okay, I've gone through this milestone, and then I've gone through this one, and then I've gone through this one. Because if you look at it as a whole 50-mile track and you don't actually know where you are, you will run out of energy because it becomes such a big thing. So celebrate success in the journey. Success is in the journey, not in the destination. Right. Okay. I think there is a few bits after that. Okay. So can we just go through this quickly? So this is the bonus material mindset. So you're going to lose money. Yeah. You're going to get rejected, unfortunately. You're going to lose friends. Some of that is fortunate. It's not unfortunate. Some of that is fortunate. You're going to lose some friends. It's going to be very challenging. You will feel lonely at times, and a lot of fear will set in, right? So a lot of other people who've been doing this for a while can resonate with all of this here. It makes sense, okay? Now, what I would like to share with you guys is all of this, as true as it may be, you need to change the wording around it. You'll go through the same experience, but look at it in a completely different way. And we're going to break it down again like we did with the previous slides. Okay, next slide. So let's change what we're actually saying. You're going to lose money. If we change that and say, next slide, I am investing my money. Yeah. So you're not spending anything, you're not losing anything, because everything that you put money into, whether it comes back or not, there's something that you've learned. Okay. It only becomes a failure if you're not learning anything. There are no such thing as mistakes. They're learning opportunities. Okay. So I am investing my money. And the next one, I will either learn or I will earn. Either way, I won't lose. Same concept of saying the case of there are no mistakes. They're just learning opportunities. No matter how painful, it's just a more painful learning opportunity. Yeah. So you're going to lose friends. I am outgrowing my current circle of friends. Yeah. And that's not a bad thing, guys. It's really not a bad thing. There's a lot of people who might actually find themselves in this property journey thinking it's a lonely place to be. No one wants to talk to me anymore. They used to come and invite me for a night out. No one calls me anymore. You know, it's not always a bad thing. Not always a bad thing. So I'm outgrowing my current circle of friends, and that's okay because you're transitioning into another set of friends that are more focused in what you're looking to do. That is nothing wrong with that. Okay, next one. Every skill worth acquiring comes with a challenge. So when I say it's going to be challenging, if it's not worth acquiring, it's not going to be challenging, right? Everyone lives in a certain level of comfort zone, right? The longer you live in your comfort zone, there's no growth in it. Yeah. You step out of your comfort zone becomes bigger. You step out of it again, it becomes bigger. And the bigger your comfort zone, the more you're growing. So every skill worth acquiring comes with a challenge. Right, you will feel lonely at times. I am transitioning into a circle that aligns with my goals. So you've got two friend circles. You're moving from this circle to the other one. Whilst you're in the middle of the two circles, you may feel lonely, but it's because you're transitioning into a circle that aligns with your goals. Okay? It's just a process. Feel the pain, work it through it, grow through it until you get to a point where, oh, there's another circle of friends that are more aligned with what I'm looking to do, and you're happy again. A lot of fear will set in. False evidence appearing real. So we use fear as an acronym. It's false evidence appearing real. Feel the fear and do it anyway. So they talk about the fact that people who are courageous are not necessarily brave. It's because they feel that fear, but they just do it anyway. Yeah. Fear is just a natural instinct in the body that actually protects us, right? It's a level of protection that we have, but it's not a way of just stopping you from doing anything. You feel that fear, appreciate it and say, thank you very much, body, for protecting me, but I'm going anyway. Yeah. And you actually start building that courage. You actually grow with it. So don't see fear as a bad thing. For those that might think, because I'm scared, I'm weak. Everyone feels fear. Everyone. Anyone who you think that person is courageous, they're fearless. No such thing. Everyone fears and they do it anyway. Right? Next one. This is the most important message I want you to understand. For all the things that I've been sharing, you can ignore everything else, but this is the most important thing. In what you're going through right now, you are not alone. Someone else is going through it. Someone else has gone through it. Someone else is about to go through it. Reach out to other people, speak about your challenges, and you will get the assistance that you're looking for. And Muzzie's done.